Okay, so who and what about regarding hollering? Now, that's just what we call it in my space. My good friend Dottie Expedito, author and pastor in Arizona, she talks about she has a different terminology for it in the tradition of Hispanic culture, but you can come up with whatever it means for noise making and exhaling and expressing both pain and promise at the same time. That's really what lament is. People are like, I'm mad in the Bible. This ain't fair. How long we got to be here? Why we got to sing this song with this horrible, situation? How long? And yet I still believe that you are a God who can bring us through, kind of stuff. Okay, so that's for those of you that are still trying to figure out after my long diatribe what is lament. We have it in those kinds of expressions biblically, but also the naming of hollering is what people understand who are not in church. So my little passage that I read to you was just to kind of point at you to say, how is it in your space that you deal with the birth pains or the reality, or how do you have reality check in the life of your community? Now, you may do it in very unique ways liturgically. Some of us have prayers of confession, and we have very, direct ways that we do that. But when you go from the inside out, how do you encourage and empower your people to take their practices and their understanding and communicate them and talk about it in spaces and with people who don't speak our who don't share the same lingua franca or common speak? So that's really part of when I talk about the language, all these expressions and metaphors, this kind of parabolic kind of paradigm that Christ employed. It not only worked then, but it still works now. You just got to break it down. So everything they taught you in seminary, relearn it. Or rename it. Okay? I'm going to get to your tables and your points, but just as an example real quick, I could not say my first year in seminary, I could not say deuteromeristic. Not to mention, nobody in my congregation where I was hanging out and serving gave two rats about deuteromeristic cycle. And I was the youth pastor, or youth minister. I wasn't even pastor. We don't use terms like that until you earn them. Pastor's a term of endearment. Reverend is a distinction by the IRS, professional distinction. But anyway, I couldn't say deuteromeristic. And nobody understood what the deuteromeristic cycle was. Anybody still don't know what the deuteromeristic cycle was? I know you know. You look brilliant. You look like you know it. You are. But anyway, what is it?
I don't know.
Oh, okay. I thought you just raised your hand that you knew. I wasn't trying to be funny. Man, you messed me up. I don't feel bad. Anyway, deuteromeristic. This is how I explained it to my youth group. I said, because I said, we're going to talk about the deuteromeristic cycle. That's the first mistake on Tuesday night youth Bible study. Just open up and say, we're going to talk about deuteromeristic cycle. They were like, huh? I said, we're going to talk about the doo-doo cycle. What's that? And I told them about how God blessed them, and Israel would go a while and do good, and then all of a sudden something would happen, and they decided to do what the heck they wanted to do, and it ended up being bad. And so then they went through some bad things and had bad things happen and done to them, and they promised they'd never do it again. And so God said, okay, I got you. I'm going to fix it up. And they do good for a while, and then they go do something stupid again. And all of that is the doo-doo cycle. Of course, I had young kids at the time. They were, so that was a commonplace thing in our house, the doo-doo cycle. That was a good fight, too, to figure out who's going to change that diaper. Anyway, too much information, as always. So what did you come up with your table? Who and what kind of hollering? What do you guys have here? One or two of them. Where are people hollering? Okay, now they're fighting. You go. No, you go. Girl, you go. You're so good at it. Go ahead.
We just really say it. Okay, we just have a poverty issue.
Poverty. Okay, yes, ma'am. Is that it?
And
Drug issue. All right. So, and education.
By class of schools, life skills.
Okay, so life skills, how to live, life skills. Okay, poverty, drugs. What is? We'll come back to that. Okay, cool. That's what you got? Thank you. Anyone have, I heard a couple people and they had some specifics about drugs at some tables. I heard something about opiates. Opiates, is that right? Opioids, probably. All right. Yes, sir.
Suicide.
Suicide. I think I heard that at a couple of tables. Why can't I spell suicide today? Okay, is that all? That was the main one?
Opioid addiction.
So opioid addiction, suicide, okay. Some others? This table, and then I'll come over to you. Yes?
Entitlement.
Entitlement. Yes, sir.
Endemic.
Oh. What? As my daughter would have said when she's younger. What that is, Daddy?
Endemic apathy.
What's
I don't care.
okay. Endemic apathy. Is that in the church or just in the community? Oh, did I? Okay. Yes.
Where I serve, and I suspect where many of us serve, there seems to be we're so self-absorbed, and in where I sit, we're kind of thinking about, well, how are we going to have enough money to afford to stay open, pay our apportionments, all this stuff, but there's that we're just blind to what's happening in the community. It kind of piggybacks on what John was saying about the endemic apathy,
Absorption.
of blindness, and being so self-absorbed that one is blind to what's actually happening.
Okay. I don't feel like I spelled that right, but don't judge me. Okay, so I have self-absorption. If you don't mind, I added under there overwhelming, just because I'm kind of hopeful for something. Anyone else? Others that are different than the drugs and different things? Yes, brother.
Our small group, we talked about youth vandalism due to lack of parenting.
Okay. Can I? Yeah. Okay. So, how does vandalism correlate with lack of parenting? From the table.
Just the kids in the community, in the summertime or up late,
Okay.
smoking in the park, walking around, damaging things.
Okay.
And so much so that the people in the community, are wanting to do something to help the kids because they view that as a crime.
Okay. All right. So that's helpful. I know I said a lot, and I'm sorry I talked too much. But when I think I referenced a little bit earlier about that lament or hollering is not only audible or vocal, but it's physical or it's acted out upon things, and all of it is a purpose towards what? It's intentional towards what? Getting your attention. Okay. So, and you kind of alluded to it. Otherwise, if we don't tear some stuff up or make something that you honor or think is important, if we don't mess it up, you haven't seen us. So, and you're probably right about what I was thinking about when I asked you about parenting was, you referenced basically what supervision and what relationship is or is not. And so vandalism there, it's a cry for help. It's a cry for help. Yes, brother.
So these are some verbal hollerings with strong affirmations with nodding that we've heard, that some of us have heard. Why does God allow hurricanes to happen to only certain people? Why can't we be separated as a country by race? Why are they trying to take away my guns?
Okay, I guess you're not going to invite me to revival anytime soon. Oh man, those were deep. Gun, hurricanes, and what was the other one? Why can't we be segregated? I was going to say why. Kind of just shot a hole in my whole lament, defining.
I'm just the secretary. I just write that down.
Yeah, you must say you were like real dismissive, like this ain't me. Not my church.
Then they go back to the self-absorption and the overwhelming, the lack of.
Nah. I'm gonna pray on that one before I answer. Okay, Leah, but nah. Yes, Sage. Ignorance. Okay, ignorance. Okay.
She isn't?
I've seen her yacht when I took one of those tours down in Miami and St. Croix. It's nice, and she should be. Okay, anyone else different? And before I press my point with this, anyone? Yeah.
The poverty is because of underemployment.
Okay.
There's no jobs.
Okay. I'm glad you added that. Because one of the questions I was going to ask with this, I wanted to get through. Anyone else? Any other things different before I start? Yes, sis, I'm sorry.
Suicide.
We got suicide. Okay, then domestic violence. Right on.
Political corruption.
Isn't that synonymous? I'm sorry.
In certain areas of the state.
I got people from Chicago. Vote often, go early, vote often. Anyway, yes, bro.
We got online bullying and trolling should probably be on that list.
Okay, yeah. Now, again, and I appreciate you. I'm sorry I cut short on this, but this is all practice towards what you can begin to do in your spaces with people. We have a practice in my kind of cultural space and tradition where at prayer time, I know it might be dangerous in some of our congregations. I don't give people the mic. Let me just be honest. You don't get to run up to the mic. But we have, from time to time, we have in our prayer, in our corporate prayer, a point where people can just, call out names or call out situations. And so, and we, in a liturgical sense or in a worship sense, that's a way that we affirm, that we let people name and claim their own situations, circumstances as they understand them, as they identify them, because to get someone to do that with God, you need to invite them to do that. Because there are some people who don't ask the why God questions, irrespective of what they're asking why God for. My God is big enough, I believe, in my own practice and understanding to wrestle with those questions. I also know that God does not always answer how we need and want. And God is not always forthcoming with whys. I believe the Bible is much better at telling us maybe how and sometimes what, but it's not always the best indicator and explicator of why. And so I would just recommend to whomever in the universe that may be encountered by that particular set of interrogatives. There's a great old book, Why Do Bad Things Happen to Good People, by Rabbi Harold Kushner. Yep. That'll at least take care of the hurricane sickness, MS, life happening stuff. I could go so many places with the gun thing. Wake up, Will. Okay. So here's the deal with this. If we know that all of this inherently is a cry for help or a signaling of hurt, then what are we going to do? Who's listening? And how and what are the ways that we first respond? You cannot do ministry in a vacuum. So what you've just done, there's obviously some needs in your community, and I'm sure in some shape, form, or fashion, people within your constituency are enduring these things or recovering from these acts or struggling through whatever you've listed up here and wrestling with this. And again, the personal question as a practitioner and a leader, one, are we addressing this? How are we willing to meet these needs or these issues as they are with unconditional love? Now, you can't do everything. So you can't. But you got to begin to wrestle with that. So I'm glad you've done this. Now, I was going to ask about poverty because some of these items you really have to define out. Because I don't know what poverty means here. I mean, I can use the federal definition, or I can use kind of the general reality. I had a conversation recently with someone in leadership, and I get asked from time to time about church planting because I'm a church planter, and we have not really been successful in the denomination across the board. We only have a handful of churches that have been maybe ethnic centered, that have, as church plants, that have really survived across the lifespan of about 5 to 7 years. And I'm looking to Kay to make sure I'm not out of order. I said the connection. I'm not referencing any conferences. It's a connection-wide thing. And so from time to time, people, do reach out to me because it's significant that we've made it 6 years, particularly as a parachute plant. And so someone was talking and they said, well, our strategy, probably we need to, if we know churches are struggling and they can't support themselves, maybe we need to go plant churches where people are of means. And, in my mind, kind of like some of you who just murmured out, I was like, that's mean. But I understood why they were saying it. But I referenced that because I asked, the question I raised to follow up was, okay, so if we're, and this is the language that was used, we need to probably look at doing something in a middle class community versus a lesser class or community. And I asked him, I said, well, what do you define as middle class? Because if I use federal guidelines, I'm sure, though you may not want to admit or, agree, everybody in here is middle class at minimum. Okay? And I bet everybody in here needs every one of the checks that you get. And if you miss at least 2 to 3 of them consecutively, you will go down a couple of rungs that is barely over what, by federal guidelines, is middle class. So it's one thing to be able to say we want to go to a place where people own their houses versus where they rent. Okay? But what happens when God allows a hurricane and in 3 days your life savings, belongings, assets, stability is no more? Are we not going to go and do ministry? And if we only have an affluent church ministry and theology, What does that say? Now, I'm taking us into some muddy waters with that kind of reference. But it is a question that we have to begin to further ask ourselves, because when we talk about meeting needs, sometimes we assume that poverty or people in need, what they need is food. And that may be true. But if you're not willing to feed every day. So here's another example I'm gonna let you do at your table. We're moving from affirming to act. That's the last one. I want you to do this at your table. And you might want to do it by yourself in case you're a little awkward about sharing the truth. Wait for it. I want you to list every ministry of your church that does not require someone to come on your main campus. I want you to identify every ministry that not only does not require someone to come on your main campus, they do not have to be a member or registered, identified person to your congregation. I want you to list every ministry that not only they don't have to come on campus or be a member, but is not relegated to a particular time designated by your constituency only. So if you have a pantry, but it's only open on Tuesdays between 11 and 1:30 because the little ladies usually go play bridge or have to watch the babies, and they don't have anything, they don't do that any other day, I don't want you to count that.
How about visitations to them?
Any ministry that's not on your main campus, that doesn't require you to be a member, and that is not locked to a specific time or constraints to your constituency or office.